Good afternoon, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know. And I want to document an idea that I actually had quite some time ago about an elevator system. And I just watched a funny video from Neal Degrassi Tyson, who is a famously intelligent mathematician, among other things, probably a physicist. I don't really know what the true scope of his skills are, but I am an amateur physicist. I do a lot of programming and physics simulations, games and animations and stuff. So I have some experience, and I want to talk about this idea. So the space elevator, the principle is pretty easy to understand. It's a fixed structure on the Earth's surface that is very tall and offers the ability to quickly and efficiently elevate structures or people into space, into orbit usually. So my idea is, a lot of people have thought about this for a long time. It's not a new idea, but the big challenge in propelling something into orbit, whether it's an elevator or a rocket or by any means, seems to be stabilizing the energy in a way that doesn't blow up the astronauts or kill them with G forces or any number of ways that things could go sideways. Rockets are notoriously dangerous in terms of blowing up because they contain explosives. That's basically what rocket fuel is. It's a managed explosive reaction, and for that reason they are dangerous and very difficult to manage and stabilize, historically speaking. The elevator would be obviously ambitious for other reasons because it is very large, potentially, probably very expensive to build, and might not even be practical conceptually. So the video I just watched, I'll link that in the description, asks the question, is it even possible or conceivable? Why would people do this, or how could they do it, and what would it look like in terms of how much time it takes to get there? Mr. Tyson describes geosynchronous orbit, which is the point at which an orbiting object could just stay above a fixed point of reference above the Earth's surface, as being at an elevation of 23,000 miles. So I don't know if that number is correct, but the principle is the same regardless, whether the number is accurate or not. I'm going to move forward in this video, assuming that number is correct. I don't have an easy way to verify that at the moment, but 23,000 miles is pretty high up, and it sounds like it's in the ballpark. So a space elevator, presumably, bare minimum would need to be able to reach that height. And the question is asked in his video, how long would it take going 1,000 miles per hour, excuse me. Well, it's not that simple. Obviously, you don't start out going 1,000 miles per hour, because that would be the same as running into a surface at 1,000 miles per hour, and that would not work, obviously. So you accelerate, right? There's going to be a rate of acceleration, and then your question becomes, what is that rate? How long does it take to get you there? So people can handle up to, trained fighter pilots can sometimes handle up to, 8 or 9 Gs, but on the outside, the human frame is not designed to withstand tremendous gravitational forces. We just aren't built for it. We'll black out, circulation becomes a problem. So a reasonable starting point would probably be -1 G, which is accelerating, discounting the 1 G that you're already experiencing at all times on the Earth's surface. So -1 G, in addition to the Earth's normal gravity, would be -2 Gs if you think about it. But accelerating at -1 G gives you, turns out, if wind resistance or air resistance isn't a problem, after 1 minute, rough calculation has you going about 600 miles per hour. After a full minute of accelerating at 1 G upward, falling upward at 1 G. 600 miles per hour after 1 minute. So if we're going to 23,000 miles, spoiler alert, at the end, you could get there in an hour. If you never slowed down your acceleration, your rate of acceleration, you would continue accelerating, falling upwards, assuming that wind was not a problem, air resistance is zero resistance. You would be there in right about an hour, but you'd be traveling at 23,000 miles per hour. So you would have to decelerate, and that it becomes a more complex problem when you're trying to figure out the rate of change needed to maximize your trip while keeping it, reasonably safe for human beings. So anyway, my idea is different. I want to talk about, this is just a concept overview of a space elevator. I want to talk about this idea that I have actually had for quite some time. I haven't thought about it in a while, but I want to document it. Seeing as, like I mentioned, the main challenge in any propulsion system is stability and safety, that excludes a lot of options right off the bat, such as, the big obvious sources of energy, like nuclear detonations. I mean, that might sound prohibitive right on the surface, because you don't want to be an astronaut with a nuke tied under you. How's that going to look, right? So, but here's the idea. Hear me out. Imagine a fixed structure, kind of like an elevator, a space elevator, but not reaching all the way up to geosynchronous orbit at 23,000 miles, reaching perhaps maybe halfway up. Okay, so be what, 11,500 miles? Yeah, give or take. Did I get that right? Something like that. So, and you have basically a cavern or cavity at the base where nuclear fuel is placed in anticipation of a launch. And it can be any amount. Here's the beauty of this system. You can scale up your fuel, your nuclear fuel, like it's basically you're putting a bomb in there, and it can be as large and powerful as it needs to be to launch something into orbit. And your obvious challenge is to dampen the explosion so that humans can ride in a ship on top of this. So, okay, I'm not quite done yet. Hear me out. So, how do you do that? How do you make it stable and safe and balanced enough in terms of the distribution of kinetic energy from the explosion, whatever the source is, so that it can be scaled up efficiently and easily with one detonation? Because it's very easy to harness a large amount of energy if you're not constrained by, all the systems required to make rockets consistent and safe and delay their detonation, their use over the course of the rocket's trip. If you don't have to do that, if you can just detonate something at once and somehow manage the kinetic energy that comes out of it, suddenly your options open up a little bit. So the question becomes, how do you do that? My idea is that there would be a jack-in-the-box kind of system. It sounds funny, like a spring-loaded, half-height space elevator that could be okay. So you imagine you have your chamber where the bomb is, or the fuel source, and it's a very robust chamber. I'm talking, half-mile thick solid metal or whatever your material is. It's built like a cannon. It's the biggest cannon mankind's ever seen, and it's the gunpowder in this case is a nuclear bomb, and the bullet that it shoots out of this thing is basically a disc of some kind of very heavy material that can instantly, due to the force of the explosion, adopt all of that energy in an upward fashion. All you need at that point is some kind of latency between the disk that is shooting up and a capsule or platform or vessel of some kind that is above it that gradually inherits that energy. So it becomes a very simple problem of how much distance do you need, and how fast can you transfer that energy into a vessel above it. So imagine, like I said, a 11,000 mile high structure that you fire this metal disc from this giant nuclear cannon into a spring that compresses as the disc is flying upward at a very high rate of speed with a tremendous amount of kinetic energy. And that spring, or an analogy to the spring, whatever the actual practical implementation would be, gradually transfers this upward kinetic energy to a waiting human occupied capsule. It sounds ambitious. It sounds crazy, but in principle, it works. It would work. It could be simulated very easily. Actually, I don't think I'm going to do that today, but so you can imagine this upward disk, this battery, if you will. It's a kinetic battery. Takes on the energy from the explosion, flies upward at a tremendous rate of speed, gradually transferring its kinetic payload to an even higher up, capsule or shuttle or whatever. And as it approaches that platform, that capsule, this spring begins to compress between the capsule and the disk or whatever. As that spring compresses, you get a rate of acceleration in the capsule, a latency where it was all from an instantaneous explosion. And it's not impossible. It's not inconceivable. So just a method of delaying the kinetic energy delivery to the vessel. That's all it is. And the benefit, again, last thing I'll say is the benefit would be the ability to use an arbitrary amount of fuel, quote unquote. Reach out with questions or comments to whitehotrobot@gmail.com.